They said it was impossible. Two engineering teams had spent weeks on the system, algorithms, diagnostics, full rewrites. Then she walked in. No clearance badge, no lab coat, just a quiet, focused look and a notepad. She studied the board for 12 minutes, erased 2 lines, and rewrote them by hand. Then the system blinked green. One man asked, stunned, "Wait, who the hell is she?" If you believe expertise doesn't shout, it just fixes type. She didn't guess below. The Advanced Diagnostics Laboratory at Fort Kessler Research and Development Command hadn't seen normal sleeping schedules in 17 consecutive days. The problem consuming everyone's waking hours, a critical targeting interface embedded within a next-generation drone navigation suite worth $47 million. On paper, the code architecture was theoretically sound. In practice, the entire system consistently froze after exactly 17.2 seconds of airborne loopback testing. They had tried absolutely everything imaginable, completely rewriting the neural mapping algorithms, rebuilding the input-output bridge from scratch, even testing a complete firmware rollback from 5 iterations previous. Nothing worked. Nothing even came close. The higher-ups from the Pentagon called it a potential contractor failure requiring immediate investigation. The exhausted engineers whispered something much worse: fundamental design-level flaw. If that assessment proved accurate, 6 months of intensive testing would be completely scrapped. Federal funding would be cut immediately. Multiple careers would be destroyed overnight. That Thursday morning, Captain James Brenner, the lead project officer responsible for delivering results, barked at his completely exhausted team with barely controlled desperation. "We have exactly 72 hours before Washington sends in external oversight teams. I don't care what experimental approaches you try, just fix this system." Technical charts were taped across every available wall surface. Complex algorithms were debated with increasing frustration. Computer simulations ran continuously until processors overheated. The main whiteboard looked like quantum mathematics had violently collided with abstract spaghetti art. No one had slept properly in days. Senior software engineer Martinez stared at code that had worked perfectly in laboratory conditions, but failed catastrophically during field testing. "There's something we're missing, something fundamental." Junior developer Chen rubbed his bloodshot eyes. "Maybe the hardware interface specifications are wrong." Systems analyst Rodriguez shook her head. "We verified hardware compatibility 17 different ways. It's not hardware." The room felt like a pressure cooker ready to explode. Careers hung in the balance. Military contracts worth hundreds of millions depended on solving this seemingly impossible puzzle. Then late that afternoon, around 15:47 hours, something unexpected happened. A woman in plain civilian clothes walked quietly into the secured laboratory without announcement or fanfare. She was notably small in stature, maybe 5'4". Dark hair tied back in a practical ponytail. No visible rank insignia or identification badges. Moving with the kind of quiet confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. Staff Sergeant Williams, monitoring the door, looked up confused. "Ma'am, are you lost? This is a restricted area." She said absolutely nothing in response. Just looked directly at the massive whiteboard covered in complex code diagrams. Her eyes moved across the technical specifications with the kind of focused intensity that suggested deep understanding rather than casual curiosity. The room gradually fell silent as engineers noticed the unexpected visitor studying their work with obvious comprehension. Captain Brenner approached cautiously. "Excuse me, but I don't believe you're authorized to be in this facility." She finally spoke, her voice quiet but clear. "What exactly is your loopback failure time?" Martinez answered automatically before anyone could stop him. 17.2 seconds. "We've analyzed it extensively." She nodded once, then pointed directly at a specific segment of the flowchart that had been puzzling them for weeks. "Your loopback doesn't fail at execution phase. It fails at acknowledgement protocol." She didn't bring official credentials or signed authorizations. She brought something infinitely more valuable: absolute clarity of purpose and understanding. Her temporary name tag simply read Nadia in block letters. No last name visible. No department designation or security clearance indicators. She wasn't listed on any project roster that Captain Brenner could access through standard channels. No one in the laboratory remembered seeing her anywhere in the building complex before this moment. She continued staring at the technical flowchart with unwavering focus, then asked another quietly penetrating question. What specific diagnostic approach have you used to isolate the timing buffer overflow? Senior engineer Martinez responded with obvious irritation and exhaustion. We've run timing diagnostics over 1,000 times, every possible configuration and parameter setting. She nodded, thoughtfully processing this information. Then she pointed to a particularly complex segment of the algorithm chart. Your loopback protocol fails not during execution phase, as you've assumed. It fails specifically at acknowledgement handshake verification. The entire room paused mid-conversation, suddenly paying complete attention. I'm sorry, what exactly are you suggesting? Captain Brenner asked, with barely concealed skepticism. Without requesting permission or explanation, she stepped directly up to the main whiteboard, took a dry erase marker from the tray, and carefully crossed out 2 specific lines of timing buffer code that had been troubling the team for days. In their place, using precise handwriting, she wrote a single elegant line of code. The laboratory went completely silent except for the quiet humming of computer cooling fans. Junior developer Chen laughed nervously, breaking the tension. Ma'am, that simple modification isn't going to solve anything fundamental. The main system monitor suddenly blinked bright green for the first time in over 2 weeks. Data streams began flowing smoothly across multiple displays. The loopback protocol executed perfectly without any signs of instability. Everyone watched the timer in stunned disbelief. 17.2 seconds, 18 seconds, 19 seconds, 20 seconds. No system crash, no failure cascade, no timeout errors. The system held stable operational status for the first time since testing had begun weeks earlier. Captain Brenner stared at the displays in complete shock. What just happened here? Nadia stepped back from the whiteboard, carefully wiped marker residue from her hands, and replied with quiet confidence. You were measuring timing intervals. I was observing behavioral patterns. The difference between measurement and observation had solved a multi-million-dollar engineering crisis in exactly 12 minutes. Staff Sergeant Williams managed to ask the question everyone was thinking. Ma'am, how did you know that would work? Because systems don't lie. People just ask them the wrong questions. She gathered her small notepad and prepared to leave as quietly as she had arrived. Martinez called out desperately, Wait, who are you exactly? Which department sent you? She paused at the laboratory door and looked back once. Someone who listens to what machines are actually saying. The system continued running flawlessly as she walked away, leaving behind a room full of engineers who suddenly realized they had been overthinking a problem that required intuitive understanding rather than brute force analysis. You don't need official permission to see what others have missed, just the courage to speak truth when it matters most. If you've ever solved the impossible while others were still arguing about methodology type, she fixed it quietly below. Word spread through Fort Kessler's research complex with the speed that only military gossip can achieve. Who exactly is she? Which department does she work for? Why wasn't she included in the original briefing logs? How did she get security clearance for restricted areas? Captain Brenner immediately requested access to her complete personnel file through standard military database channels. The request came back marked Access Restricted, Level 4 Clearance Required. He escalated the request through proper chain of command protocols. Response Access Restricted, Level 5 Clearance Required. Finally, his authorization request was flagged with an ominous security warning, Do not query without direct authorization. SCIF required for further information. That's when someone from the Defense Intelligence Agency appeared in his office without prior appointment or announcement. Agent Harrison, wearing an unremarkable gray suit and carrying minimal identification, delivered a terse warning. Captain Brenner, don't ask questions you don't want classified answers to. But behind closed conference room doors, whispered conversations inevitably leaked fragments of information. Nadia wasn't simply a civilian contractor brought in for consultation services. She was formerly a key member of Project Shard, a now-defunct DARPA research initiative specializing in neural inference systems, human-machine cognitive loopback protocols, and predictive behavioral algorithms. Project Shard had been abruptly disbanded 18 months earlier following an intensive internal ethics review. Too much technological success achieved through methods that lacked sufficient transparency for congressional oversight. Nadia Chen, her full name finally revealed through unofficial channels, hadn't been seen at any government facility since the project's controversial termination. Until today. And she hadn't requested job reinstatement or demanded official recognition for her contribution, hadn't filed paperwork or sought compensation. She had simply provided her handwritten solution, left a folded note on Captain Brenner's desk, and walked out of the building complex as quietly as she had entered. The note, written in precise blue ink, contained a single paragraph. You'll want to address compiler-level rounding errors in your navigation subsystem next. The problem won't appear in standard diagnostic logs, but your drone's turning radius will be 3 inches too wide at 70 knots airspeed. 3 days later, when engineers tested navigation precision at exactly 70 knots, they discovered she was absolutely correct. The fix required a single parameter adjustment that took less than 5 minutes to implement. Junior developer Chen, who had been struggling with unexplained navigation drift, stared at his corrected code in amazement. How could she possibly know that without running any tests? Senior engineer Martinez, now grudgingly respectful, provided the obvious answer. Because she understands these systems better than we do. The following week, Agent Harrison returned with additional instructions. Any personnel who interacted with the individual in question are to sign non-disclosure agreements. This incident is classified under national security protocols. But the engineers kept working with her modified code, which continued performing flawlessly through every subsequent test. Her handwritten additions remained on the whiteboard, carefully preserved under clear protective film. No one suggested rewriting them into standard digital format. When new team members asked about the unusual handwritten code segments, they were told simply, "Those stays exactly as written. Don't change anything." The system that had consumed weeks of expert analysis and threatened multiple careers now operated perfectly because someone had listened to what the machine was actually trying to communicate. Nadia Chen had solved an impossible problem not through superior technology or advanced algorithms, but through the kind of intuitive understanding that comes from years of genuine collaboration between human intelligence and artificial systems. She had appeared when needed, provided the solution, and vanished back into whatever classified world she inhabited, leaving behind only perfectly functioning code and the humbling reminder that expertise doesn't announce itself, it simply fixes what needs fixing. 6 weeks later, the enhanced drone navigation system went fully operational across multiple military branches. All subsequent test flights passed with unprecedented accuracy rates. Mission parameters exceeded design specifications by measurable margins. Engineering team members received official commendations for their successful problem resolution. Promotions were distributed appropriately through proper channels. But a carefully framed photograph of the original whiteboard still hung prominently in the laboratory, her handwritten code preserved in dry erase marker, deliberately left untouched as a permanent reminder. One morning, junior developer Chen approached senior engineer Martinez with a practical question. Shouldn't we convert her handwritten code into proper digital format for documentation purposes? The response came immediately and definitively from Captain Brenner. Absolutely not. We leave it exactly as she wrote it. Every character, every spacing, every detail. But sir, what's the significance of preserving handwritten code? Because that code represents something more important than documentation standards. No one heard from Nadia Chen again through official or unofficial channels. But when a Pentagon oversight team arrived 6 months later for comprehensive project debriefing, they discovered a small manila envelope tucked discreetly in the main file drawer. Inside was a paper napkin from the base cafeteria. One sentence written in blue ballpoint pen. If you still think this was about code optimization, you weren't watching closely enough. The oversight team requested clarification about the note's meaning and origin. Captain Brenner provided the only honest answer he could. Ma'am, I believe it means we were solving the wrong problem entirely. Explain that assessment, Captain. We were trying to fix code that wasn't broken. She was trying to teach us how to listen to what our systems were actually saying. The lead investigator reviewed the technical documentation with obvious confusion. Are you suggesting this was an educational exercise rather than a technical consultation? Ma'am, I'm suggesting that some people understand the difference between making technology work and making technology communicate. 3 months after the Pentagon review, strange reports began circulating through classified military technology networks. Similar impossible engineering problems at other research facilities had been mysteriously solved by an unidentified civilian consultant who appeared briefly, provided elegant solutions, and disappeared without requesting credit or compensation. Always the same pattern: handwritten modifications to complex systems, solutions that seemed almost impossibly intuitive, and immediate departure without explanation. The unofficial nickname that began appearing in classified communications, the ghost debugger. Senior officials attempted to track down this mysterious consultant through interagency databases and security clearance records. Every investigation led to classified dead ends and restricted access warnings, but systems across multiple military research facilities continued operating flawlessly thanks to her brief interventions. Junior developer Chen, now promoted to senior developer, often brought new team members to view the preserved whiteboard. This is what real expertise looks like, not the kind that makes noise or demands recognition, the kind that simply fixes what needs fixing and walks away. Who was she really? Someone who understood that the best solutions don't come from overthinking problems. They come from listening to what the problems are trying to tell you. The handwritten code continued executing perfectly, a permanent reminder that sometimes the most profound expertise whispers rather than shouts, solves rather than explains, and leaves behind working systems rather than detailed documentation. Because true mastery doesn't need to prove itself through credentials or authorizations. It proves itself by making impossible things work. For more stories where the quiet ones leave the deepest impact, subscribe to Steelheart Stories.